Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Always operational, written by T and Tungsten. We were drifting through space with no hope for survival. Our engines were shot, my hyperdrive had burned out, and half of our crew had been vaporized, along with 4 decks of our ship, and the shields failed us. My scales felt cold and wet, while my first officer gave me a status report. The bridge was completely undamaged, which made it feel all the more surreal that my ship was dying, along with my crew. I wanted to yell and mangle my seat with my claws, but I controlled my emotions and pretended to be cold and calculated. I knew that this was what my crew needed right now. "Captain, sir, what are your orders?" asked my first officer. I could see the same emotions in her eyes. She knew. "Distance to nearest friendly outpost," I asked Garen, my communications officer. In a desperate move for survival, we had followed an unexplored and unstable hyperlane into the sticks of the Orion Cygnus arm. I knew the answer would be bad, but there was no point in hiding it from the crew. Garland swallowed heavily. 578 light years, Captain. Even if we somehow repaired the sublight engines and put the crew into cryosleep, the ship was already barely holding together, and it would never survive the long journey. Not to mention the hundreds of years that would pass. Families long dead and forgotten. The war may be lost. We might return to a glassed homeworlds. Or even worse, they might have become colonies for the Farron. Most of my crew would probably prefer a quick death. I knew I would. My thoughts were interrupted. "Contact! 500 clicks, sir," yelled the tactical officer. "And they followed us! Garen! ID! Unknown, sir. The computer can't identify it. It's not Farron's, at least." "Did it follow us? Where did it come from?" "Not from hyperspace, sir. They just appeared out of nowhere along with a huge photon flash." "Cloaking deck?" "Not any types that we've ever seen before," the tactical officer. "On the screen!" I commanded. What my officers showed me was like no ship I had ever seen before. Besides maybe in ancient records, it was angular and ugly, like a hammer made of steel with many angular protrusions. Its sublight engines were huge and its armor was thick. Probably ablative. The sensors showed only a weak deflector shield currently active. It was not optimized for hyperspace at all. It was maybe 100 meters long and 25 meters wide, and noticeably dense for its size. "It's scanning us too, sir." "Weapon signatures?" "I don't think so, sir. It's hard to tell. They might use unknown tech." I did not order to raise the shield simply because we had none left. All emitters were burned out. We were sitting ducks. For a split second, I considered funneling all of our remaining power into the lasers in order to try and disable the ship. Maybe we could capture it safely. To not let that unexpected lifeline escape. Yes, my thoughts were that desperate. I am ashamed of it, but I did decide against it. That's what the Farron would do, I thought. And it could end as well as mutual destruction. "Garen, send the first contact protocol. Tell them that we come in peace." "They were quicker, sir. We got the message, along with the translation protocol." "Read it." "Unknown spaceship. This is the SDF Marinus. On your current call, Spectre, you are about to violate Terran space in 15 minutes. Identify yourself or turn around. Peace is an option." I was taken aback. An option? "Yes, sir. That's what it says." I did not know whether I should be relieved or concerned, but in the end, my desire for survival overwhelmed my caution. Whoever these Terrans were, at that moment they offered the only chance of survival for my crew. Ship looked pretty small and primitive, but I hoped that they could at least evacuate parts of my crew. "Open a channel," I said to Garen. "SDF Vallis Marinus. This is the Union ship Anna. We come in peace, but we are currently unable to comply to you due to engine failure. We require assistance. No hostility is intended," I dictated. An answer came almost immediately. "Union ship Tanner, your ship design is not known to us. Please confirm. You are not human. Please define Union." As expected, it was actually a first contact situation. "Affirmative, we are neither human nor Terran. The Union is a coalition of 7 sentient species and roughly 55 systems." After this, it took a while until they answered again. "Union ship Tanner, Your offer of peace is under consideration. Special permission has been granted, and you may enter Terran space under our supervision and escort. We will tow you to a space dock, Proxima Centauri B. Prepare for warp bubble enclosure. The what now? What kind of bubble? But before I could answer, things got hectic. Captain, hyperspace activity detected. Someone is coming after us. I began to grind my sharp teeth. Had to be the Farron. Nobody else knew where we had fled to, and nobody else would be willing to go down an unstable hyperlane. This would be the end of us, but the least we could do is warn the Terrans. Terran ship, be advised, we were being pursued by an enemy ship. It will arrive here shortly. You should flee. Your technology is no match for them. The Terrans promptly responded and fired up their engines. They burned away from us at high speed and rotated their ship so that the hammerhead front faced us directly. Captain, I'm reading nuclear signatures from the Terran ship. Union ship, explain yourself. I swallowed heavily. We are currently at war with a species called the Farron. They are the cause of the damage to our ship. They must have followed our hyperspace signature. We are not trying to ambush you. Our weapons are defunct. Now it took even longer for them to answer. Captain, we are being scanned again. I extended and retracted my claws over and over again, and it felt like my body temperature had fallen by 2 degrees, until the Terrans answered again. Your explanation has been deemed acceptable. We do not take sides in your conflict, but we are currently in Terran space, and you are under our supervision. Any hostile ship will be asked to leave, or made to leave. At least they would not shoot at us, but were they crazy? We strongly advise you flee, Terran ship. Noted. Only moments later, a huge hyperspace window began to open, 3,000 clicks distance. The Terrans burned again, and only moments later they were positioned between the window and our wrecked ship. Like an image of a doomsday, a huge ship emerged from the blue maelstrom, a Farron destroyer, 5 kilometers long and nearly as wide and half as high. Without a moment's notice, they began to fire at us, and all hell broke loose. 2 thick beams of light were fired at us from the front of the destroyer, like lightning bolts of an angry god, too fast to dodge at this distance. The Terran ship took the full brunt of the lasers. I thought the whole ship would evaporate. But then the stars around us went blurry. The destroyer disappeared from the view. Then the stars became normal again, and the destroyer was gone. Everybody on the bridge was disoriented. The viewport AI quickly spun around to view, and there was the destroyer again. This time, it faced backwards, much closer than before. The destroyer was still firing bolts of death into the now empty space in front of it, clearly as confused as we were. Then the Terran ship burned into view again, accelerating at breakneck speed towards the destroyer. It left behind a trail of molten armor like a shooting star. It was rocked back twice despite forward acceleration as huge projectiles were fired from its giant railguns. The destroyer finally noticed a miraculous jump and began to turn around and recharge its main weapons. But the Terran ship jumped again, like it was mocking the slow destroyer. A flash of blinding light and the ship appeared above the destroyer, only 25 clicks away. Thousands upon thousands of rockets emerged from the hull of the Terran ship like a swarm of angry fireflies. Too many, too close, and too quick for the point defenses of the destroyer. A flash of light in the Terran ship was gone again, followed by many thousands more flashes as the nuclear warheads overwhelmed the shields of the destroyer. The viewport instantly went dark in order to protect our eyes and the senses. When we could see again, the top side of the destroyer had turned into a molten red hellscape. The destroyer began to spin out of control, clearly disabled. But then 2 more impacts rocked the huge wreckage. There was no sound in space, but I thought I could hear it. Dunk! Dunk! 2 mighty punches rocked the destroyer. The war steel was punctured from back to front. 2 shuttle-sized holes were punched through the entire length of the ship, and the explosion of matter ejected out the exit holes at the front, and shortly afterwards, also out the back. Countless smaller explosions rocked all parts of the ship as the fusion reactors ran out of control. Then came another flash of light, and the Terran ship was back in front of us. Steaming, molten, and tattered, but still in one piece. Union Ship Tana, be advised, we will now tow you to Proxima Centauri. It took me a moment to come back to my senses. My first officer was standing next to me, breathing heavily. Communications Officer Garen looked at me with wide eyes. I gave him the signal to transmit. Whatever you say, Terran warship, we will comply. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, it's difficult to pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.